Welcome to True Crime Cases, where we delve into the darkest corners of human nature, where everyone knew everyone. Secrets were hard to keep. Yet beneath the surface of this idyllic community, there were whispers of a love affair that defied the norms of society. It was an affair that would not only shatter reputations, but would also lead to a tragic and unexpected ending. This is the haunting story of Dr. Danya Jose and Nurse Zora, whose passionate, forbidden relationship ended in amament of uncontrollable rage and irreversible consequences. Brooksville was the kind of town where people prided themselves on their strong moral values, their sense of community, and their commitment to traditional family life. It was a place where children played safely in these streets, neighbors greeted each other with warm smiles, and everyone attended the same church on Sundays. To the outside world, Brooksville was a model of American small-town life, untouched by the problems that plagued larger cities. But like all places, Brooksville had its share of secrets, and the most shocking of them all was yet to come. Dr. Danya Jose was the epitome of success in Brooksville. In her early 39s, she had climbed the ranks to become one of the top surgeons at St. Mary's General Hospital. She was known for her exceptional skill in the operating room, her unwavering dedication to her patients, and her ability to remain calm under the most intense pressure. Colleagues admired her patience, trusted her, and the hospital board valued her contributions immensely. Danya was also a wife and mother, married to Kevin Jose, a successful attorney at a prestigious law firm in the neighboring city. Together, they had built a life that many envied: a beautiful home, 2 accomplished teenage children, and a marriage that seemed unbreakable. But beneath the surface of this polished exterior, Danya was struggling with deep, unspoken, broken dissatisfaction. The demands of her career, the pressures of maintaining a perfect home life, and the expectations placed upon her by society had taken their toll. Despite her many accomplishments, Danya felt a growing sense of emptiness, a void that neither her career nor her family could fill. She found herself questioning the choices she had made, wondering if this was truly the life she wanted. The life she had worked so hard to build now felt like a gilded cage, trapping her in a routine that offered no real joy or fulfillment. Danya's marriage, once a source of great happiness, had also begun to deteriorate. Kevin, while still loving and supportive, was often preoccupied with his own career. The long hours he spent at the law firm meant that they rarely spent time together as a couple. When they did, their conversations were often superficial, centered around the logistics of managing their household and the accomplishments of their children. The intimacy they once shared had faded, replaced by a sense of duty and obligation. Danya felt increasingly isolated, unable to confide in her husband about the dissatisfaction that gwetted her daily. It was during this time of emotional turmoil that Danya met Nurse Zora. Zora was a new addition to the staff at St. Mary's, having recently moved to Brooksville from a larger city in search of a quieter, more fulfilling life. In her late 22s, Zora was everything Danya was not: spontaneous, carefree, and unburdened by the weight of societal expectations. She was known for her infectious energy, her laughter that could brighten even the darkest of days in the hospital, and her compassionate approach to nursing that made her a favorite among patients. Zora's presence was like a breath of fresh air in the sterile, high-pressure environment of the hospital, and it wasn't long before Danya found herself drawn to her. At first, their connection was purely professional. Danya admired Zora's dedication to her work and her ability to maintain her cheerful demeanor, even in the face of the hospital's daily challenges. Zora, on the other hand, looked up to Danya as a mentor, someone who had achieved great success in a field that Zora was just beginning to navigate. Their friendship grew quickly, fueled by late-night conversations in the break room and shared lunches where they would discuss everything from medical cases to their personal lives. As their bond deepened, Danya found herself looking forward to their time together. The hours they spent talking, laughing, and sharing stories. Zora's carefree attitude was a stark contrast to the disciplined, structured life that Danya had always known. And it wasn't long before she began to feel something more than just friendship. It started with a lingering glance, a touch that lasted just a moment too long, and soon Danya found herself consumed by thoughts of Zora, thoughts that left her both exhilarated and terrified. For Zora, who had always been open about her bisexuality, the attraction was clear from the start. She admired Danya not only for her professional accomplishments, but also for the strength and determination. She saw beneath her calm exterior, she sensed the loneliness in Danya, the yearning for something more, and found herself falling for her, despite knowing the complications that would arise. Zora, who had always followed her heart, was willing to take whatever risks necessary to be with Danya, even if it meant stepping into uncharted territory. Their affair began in secret. Shrouded in the fear of discovery, Danya knew the risks she was taking, the possibility of losing her family, her career, and the respect of her community. But the pull toward Zora was too strong to resist. Their stolen moments together became the highlight of Danya's day, a reprieve from the monotony and dissatisfaction that had plagued her life for so long. Zora, for her part, was equally captivated by Danya. She had never been in a relationship that felt so intense, so all-consuming, and she was willing to risk everything to be with her. They met in secluded spots around town, places where they could be alone and free to express their feelings without fear of judgment. In the dim light of a quiet baroor, the shadows of a secluded park, they would talk for hours, sharing their dreams, their fears, and their hopes for the future. For Danya, these moments with Zora were like a lifeline, pulling her out of the depths of her despair and giving her something to look forward to. But as their relationship deepened, sodded the complications, Danya was living a double life, torn between her duties as a wife and mother and her desire to be with Zora. The stress of maintaining this facade began to wear on her, and she found herself becoming increasingly distant from her family. Kevin, who had always been supportive of Danya's career, started to notice the changes. In her behavior, she was more withdrawn, more irritable, and less engaged with their children. He attributed it to the pressures of her job, never suspecting that his wife was hiding a secret that could destroy their family. He tried to reach out to her to reconnect, but his efforts were met with indifference. Danya, consumed by guilt and fear, found it increasingly difficult to maintain the illusion of a happy marriage. The love she once felt for Kevin had been overshadowed by her feelings for Zora, and she couldn't bring herself to pretend otherwise. Zora, too, was feeling the strain. She loved Danya deeply, but the secrecy of their relationship was becoming unbearable. She wanted to be with Danya openly without having to hide their love or worry about the consequences. Zora began to push Danya to make a decision, to either leave her husband and be with her or end the affair for good. Danya, caught between her love for Zora and her obligations to her family, was paralyzed by indecision. She knew that whatever choice she made, someone would be hurt, and the thought of causing pain to those she cared about was more than she could bear. The tension between them reached a boiling point one evening when Zora confronted Danya during one of their clandestine meetings. She demanded to know if Danya was willing to leave her husband and start a new life with her. Danya, overwhelmed by guilt and fear, couldn't give her a straight answer. She loved Zora, but the thought of leaving her family, of destroying the life she had worked so hard to build, was too much for her to bear. In the heat of the moment, words were exchanged that could never be taken back. Zora accused Danya of being a coward, of leading her on and playing with her emotions. Danya, feeling cornered, laugh flashed out in return, accusing Zora of not understanding the complexity of her situation. Their argument escalated quickly, emotions running high on both sides. Zora, hurt and frustrated, stormed out, leaving Danya alone with her thoughts. In the days that followed, their relationship became strained. They avoided each other at the hospital, their once close bond now a source of pain and tension. Danya threw herself into her work, hoping that the distractions of the hospital would help her forget about Zora. But no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't escape the nagging feeling that she had made a terrible mistake. Zora, too, was struggling. She missed Danya terribly, but she couldn't bring herself to reach out to her. Instead, she retreated into her own world of pain and disappointment, distancing herself from everyone around her. The vibrant, carefree woman who had once lit up the hospital with her laughter was now a shadow of her former self, consumed by heartache and regret. The breaking point came one night when Danya, unable to bear the silence any longer, reached out to Zora, asking her to meet at their usual spot. Zora, despite her reservations, agreed to the meeting. She still loved Danya, and a part of her hoped that they could find a way to make things work. But when she arrived at the meeting place, she found Danya in a state of emotional turmoil. Danya, who had spent the past few weeks wrestling with her feelings, had come to a decision one that would change their lives forever. Through tears, Danya told Zora that she couldn't leave her family. The guilt was too much for her to bear, and she couldn't bring herself to destroy the lives of her husband and children. She apologized to Zora, saying that while she loved her deeply, their relationship had torn. Zora, already fragile from the strain of their relationship, was devastated. She felt betrayed, abandoned by the woman she had risked everything to be with in a moment of desperation. Zora pleaded with Danya to consider to run away with her and start a new life together, but Danya Herman made up, stood firm. The pain in Zora's eyes was unbearable, but Danya knew that this was the right decision, the only decision that could keep her family intact. She turned to leave her, heart heavy with the knowledge that she was walking away from the one person who had brought her true happiness as a living walked away. Zora was overcome with a wave of emotion, anger, sadness, betrayal, and despair, all swirled together in a tempest of pain. In a moment of uncontrollable rage, Zora grabbed a nearby object and struck Danya from behind. Danya, caught off guard, fell to the ground, her life slipping away as quickly as the blood that pulled around her. The realization of what she had done hit Zora immediately, but it was too late. Danya was gone, and there was no taking back the horrific act that had just occurred. Panic set in as Zora stood over Danya's lifeless body. The love of her life, the woman she had dreamed of, building a future with, was gone, and it was her own hand that had ended that dream. In a state of shock, Zora fled the scene, leaving Danya's body behind, hoping against hope that this was all just a nightmare she would soon wake up from. But as the reality of what she had done set in, Zora knew there was no escape from the consequences of her actions. The discovery of Danya's body the next morning sent shockwaves through Brooksville. The town was rocked by the news of the brutal murder of one of its most respected citizens. The police launched an immediate investigation, and it wasn't long before they connected the dots between Danya's affair with Zora and her untimely death. Zora was arrested at her home still, in a daze from the events of the previous night. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and she had no choice but to confess to the crime. The trial that followed was the talk of the town, with people from all walks of life speculating about the details of the case. Zora's confession left little doubt about her guilt, but the story that emerged during the trial painted a picture of a woman driven to the brink by love and desperation. The affair between Danya and Zora was laid bare for all to see, and the town that had once held Danya in such high esteem now looked at her with a mixture of pity and disdain. Zora, who had once been a beloved member of the hospital staff, was now seen as a cold-blooded killer. Her actions condemned by the very people who'd once admired her. Zora was sentenced to 15 years in prison, a punishment that many in the town felt was too lenient for the crime she had committed. Danya's family, devastated by the loss of their wife and mother, was left to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. Kevin, who had never suspected that his wife was capable of such deception, was left to grapple with the truth about the woman he had loved and the secrets she had kept from him. Their children, too, were left to navigate the murky waters of grief, anger, and confusion, struggling to make sense of the tragedy that had been their family in prison. Zora was left alone, with her thoughts haunted by the memory of what she had done. The woman who had once been so full of life and passion was now a shell of her former self, consumed by guilt and regret. The love that had once given her so much joy had turned into a source of unimaginable pain, a pain that she would carry with her for the rest of her life. As the years passed, the story of Danya and Zora faded from the headlines, but it remained a scar on the heart of Brooksville. The town that had once been a symbol of traditional values and strong community ties was now a place where people whispered about the dark secrets that lay just beneath the surface. The memory of Danya Jose, once revered for her accomplishments, was now forever tainted by the affair that had to her tragic end. And Zora Reed, who had come to Brooksville in search of a fresh start, was now remembered as the woman who had destroyed not only her own life, but the lives of so many others. The tragedy of Danya and Zora serves as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the dangers of living a life of secrets and the devastating consequences that can arise when those secrets are exposed. It is a story of love gone wrong, of passion turned to violence, and of the lasting impact that such tragedies can have on all those involved. The town of Brooksville may have moved on, but the memory of what happened will forever be etched in the minds of those who lived through it, a haunting reminder of the price of forbidden love in the years that followed. Brooksville tried to heal from the wounds left by the murder of Dr. Danya Jose, but the truth was, the town was never the same. The image of perfection that it had once projected was now marred by the knowledge that even in the most seemingly idyllic places darkness could lurk just beneath the surface. The town's people, once so quick to judge, others became more cautious, more aware of the complexities of human nature and the fragile line between love and obsession. Kevin Jose eventually moved away from Brooksville. Unable to bear the constant reminders of the life he had lost, he tried to rebuild his life in a new city. But the pain of losing Danya and the betrayal he felt never truly left him. Their children, too, struggled to find their way in the world, burdened by the stigma of their mother's affair and the tragedy that had unfolded as a result. Zora Reed served her sentence in a state of quiet remorse. The vibrant woman who had once brightened the lives of those around her was gone, replaced by someone who had lost everything she had ever cared about in prison. Zora found solace in the routine, in the small moments of human connection that were still possible, even in such a bleak environment. But the weight of her actions, the knowledge that she had taken the life of the woman she loved, was a burden she would carry with her until the day she'd leave the hospital, where Danya and Zora had once worked together. Also felt the impact of the tragedy. St. Mary's General, once a respected institution in Brooksville, was now a place where people whispered about the scandal that had taken place within its walls. The staff, who had once looked up to Danya as a role model and mentor, were left reeling from the revelation of her affair. The story of Danya and Zora became something of a legend at the hospital, a cautionary tale that was passed down from one generation of medical professionals to the next. In the end, the story of Dr. Danya Jose and Nurse Zora is a tragic reminder of the complexities of human relationships and the devastating consequences that can arise when love is allowed to turn into obsession. It is a story that will continue to haunt the town of Brooksville for years to come, a reminder that even in the most seemingly perfect of places, darkness can lurk just beneath the surface. The tragic end of Danya and Zora's relationship underscores the importance of honesty and open communication in all aspects of life. Danya's fear of confronting the truth about her feelings led her to make decisions that ultimately resulted in disaster. Had she been more forthright with herself and those around her, perhaps the outcome could have been different. The secrecy and lies that characterized their affair created a web of deceit that ensnared them both, leading to a situation where no one could escape unharmed. This story also serves as a powerful lesson on the dangers of letting emotions spiral out of control. Zora's intense love for Danya, when mixed with frustration and despair, turned into a destructive force that she couldn't contain. It's a reminder of the need for self-awareness and the importance of seeking help. When emotions become overwhelming, the ability to recognize when feelings are getting out of hand can be the difference between finding a solution and creating a tragedy. Finally, the events in Brooksville highlight the long-lasting impact that such tragedies can have on communities. The ripple effects of Danya and Zora's actions were felt far beyond their immediate circle, affecting their families, colleagues, and the entire town. It's a stark reminder that our actions, especially those driven by strong emotions, can have far-reaching consequences that extend well beyond what we might initially imagine. Thestry is a cautionary tale about the importance of considering the broader impact of our choices, not just on ourselves but on those around us. As Brooksville continues to rebuild and move forward, the lessons from this dark chapter in its history remain relevant. The town's experience is a poignant reminder. Thanks for watching True Crime Cases.